Now for the broken one. Oh no, the warlord of the underworld is talking to me. Please, no! I was overcome with maddening fear. I was so far out of my depth it was laughable. I sounded like a pathetic fool, but at that moment I was beyond caring. I'm nobody, I pleaded. I'm supposed to be a desk clerk. Cowardice, he said. Yes, I agreed desperately. I'm too cowardly for island jail. Ninth circle, he said, reserved for traitors and cowards. Will that earn me a break, like Buccaneer? My hound Cerberus awaits thee, he said. You shall be chewed endlessly within 3 sets of jaws. He just said I would be food for his dog. My tongue and my brain began to operate independently of one another. I spoke with delirium. Dragon. Milord, he said curtly. Milord, I shouted. Surely the underworld requireth bookkeeping. Dragon seemed perplexed for a moment. He shook his horned head. I hoped he had decided I wasn't worth the effort. I watched helplessly as Miramasa rose for an overhead strike. Looks like my wish is granted. Part of me was relieved to see I earned a quick death. It would be highly preferable to becoming a chew toy in the underworld. In my last moments, I could almost hear the trumpets sounding my arrival into the afterlife. Then I realized the music was real. What is that? Dragon said. He looked frantically out to sea. That's the 1812 overture, I shouted in a state of confusion that quickly turned to pure delight. I recognized the brass fanfare. It was popular in the remnant. Most attributed it to America's past. It had actually been composed by a Russian. At that moment, I really didn't care, because accompanying the festival overture was an approaching battleship. Insolence! Dragon shouted at the coming vessel. Tchaikovsky, I cried, still in my state of ecstasy. I'm saved by Tchaikovsky. The ship was old. It was hardly a match for the Schwarzbuckler, but I would have been thrilled if a rowboat had come to help me. The distinctive hull was the last vessel from the old American Navy still in service. Despite the proud history of her call sign, this one was little more than a motorboat during the Great War. She'd been decommissioned before the Soaring Twenties. Then, when times were tough, she'd been significantly upgraded to serve in the Outbreak War. Creative engineers expanded her by cannibalizing parts from ruined ships. Now the Frankenstein's monster of a battleship looked like a pieced-together eyesore. At that moment, she was a work of art to my eye. I especially loved the increased size and armaments. Captains had pushed her through the seas even in the remnant years. She remained reliable long past the recommended servitude. Today, I was thrilled she'd not been decommissioned again. Instead, the Enterprise had arrived to save my life. When he saw the remnant ship, Dragon forgot about me entirely. The music drew him like a siren song as he rushed to the edge of the beast boat. He appeared to be looking for something, or someone in particular. Whoever it was, I was grateful. All his focus was directed towards the approaching battleship with its orchestral accompaniment blaring across the waters. Did someone get the number of that bus? I heard a deep voice behind me. Atlas, you're back! I tried to stop myself from shouting. What happened? He asked. Where did Dragon go? Why do I hear cannons? He's preoccupied for the moment, I said. The remnant sent the Enterprise. Atlas's voice trailed off. Oh no, it can't be him. What's wrong? Oh, nothing is wrong, he said. A trace of a smile re-emerged on his face. He wasn't scared by any stretch of the imagination. He appeared more amused or nostalgic. I just can't believe the first day I'm free I run into Preston Cognition again. Cognition? You mean the man-made philanthropist? Charity work? Him? Atlas said, rubbing his head. I must have been out longer than I thought. Preston Cognition is the ridiculously wealthy operator of the Clockwork Armor, right? Of course, everyone knows he was Clockwork, I said, though he's not nearly as rich anymore. Shame, Atlas said. I had so few billionaire friends. Wait, are you telling me they sent Clockwork to rescue you? I would guess he sent himself, Atlas said with a short chuckle. Clockwork is a hero, but the man is a pest. Didn't I hear you tell Buccaneer you read the comic books? Well, sure, I said, but that part is just fiction, right? The cheesy lines and the catchphrases. All him, Atlas said bluntly. You've got to be kidding. Listen, when I say that every cliché hero learned from this man, Atlas said, he was the last friend I saw before they carted me off to Austria. I'm glad he survived. He was at Pearl Harbor? The histories on that day were extensive. I couldn't recall a single one that mentioned him. It seemed like a glaring detail to omit that the founder of the Armorers Guild had been present at Triple-Reich. Trust me, he wouldn't want it getting out, Atlas said. Dragon ripped open that copper suit like a can of baked beans. That must have been a sight to see, I said. No wonder he retired. Retired, Atlas said. Judging by that music, Clockwork's arm cannons want another shot. Clockwork's metal ears must have been burning. As soon as Atlas said that, I spotted a round giant flying towards us. 2 jets of flame propelled it from the Enterprise straight towards the Swasbuckler. The power armor flew on stubby legs with rocket boosters installed in the soles of its feet. They reminded me of stumps attached to a spherical body. I was no engineer, but its torso had to have been an industrial-sized boiler once. It took up most of the armor with a tiny head sticking out like a frightened turtle. A winding key stuck out from the top, constantly rotating clockwise. The metal was covered in bolts and rivets. Its chipped and faded copper paint job resembled a worn-out penny. As the rockets came in for a landing, I saw exhaust ports open on the rounded shoulders. The smokestacks whistled and pumped steam like a factory. The power armor slowly touched down on the Swasbuckler, just a few feet from the bewildered warlord. Dragon looked like he'd seen a ghost. Clockwork's short legs waddled straight up to him. As it got closer, I noticed the emblem of a grandfather clock face surrounded by a gear on the armor's chest. The made man, Cognition, halted his suit's motion. He loomed over Dragon as the warlord stared back at the riveted face on Clockwork's helmet. It reminded me of a snowman. Clockwork's oversized arms nearly dragged on the cold deck like a gorilla. Each of the mechanical limbs ended in clamps with 3 thick digits for fingers. Most importantly, Cognition had mounted 12 powder naval cannons on both of them. The music blasting from the Enterprise began to crescendo as it reached the finale. I thought of the crowds in Carnegie Hall who ran in terror the first time they heard weaponry fired as part of a concert. That must have been quite a memory for the audience. I know I'll never forget this performance either. Buccaneer and Round Robin had started to come to as well. I was glad Buck had not missed this one. He would never have believed me even if I told him. I wasn't sure I believed what was happening. "What the hell is that?" Robin squeaked. After being knocked out, his voice had become even more high-pitched than usual. "Language, young lady!" Clockwork's voice synthesizer rang out towards the stunned Dragon. "We meet again, evildoer!" Dragon looked up at the Clockwork armor. He didn't utter a single word in the presence of his former opponent. Today was turning into a Triple-Reich reunion. "Are you ready for a rematch with the steampunk savior? The soldiered soldier? The alloy ally? Representing the Armorers Guild, I am Clockwork!" "Told you," Atlas said.